Hey everybody, good morning. Boy, do I ever have a story for you guys. This one is a wild one. I've been waiting to tell it. It didn't really fit in to any of the other threads, but this one has to be told as well. So, my mom, it was around the 1975 era. Armageddon's coming. We're selling everything. And even though my grandparents were pretty balanced with things, and in some things they may have even been viewed as kind of worldly, because my grandpa, he did go to school and got a degree while he was serving the congregation. So good for him for doing that. But I do think that generation, they were older parents, and they did believe that women just had to get married. They didn't really need like a job of their own, and Armageddon was going to come soon. I don't think they believed like 1975 soon, but soon enough, basically didn't think, oh, the kids are going to get old in this system. So they pulled my mom out of school in 10th grade. She didn't even graduate, which is just such a shame. And then when you end up going through life and you were pulled out of school and people are just waiting for you to get married and be taken care of and stuff, it's just really not a way to think, especially nowadays. You didn't pay into Social Security. You have all sorts of things that are obstructing your way. So by the time that I was graduating high school, which was a day they never expected would come. Nobody thought I would graduate from high school still in this system. They, again, thought Armageddon was coming. But at this point, my grandparents' stance had changed drastically because they kind of saw that my mom, they didn't help her by pulling her out of school. So what they did is they insisted that I learn a trade. Thank God for them. And they were not in my way if I was going to go to college. But I think there's many factors that have to do with that. For one, we came from Europe where I don't feel like it was as strict if you wanted to pursue going to college. I mean, it was a little strict because in where I grew up, the high school system is a little bit different, and it's just kind of like the high school that you go to puts you on the path for life. And they put me in the high school that was actually university prep, and that for witnesses was a little bit like, are you going to go to university? I don't think anyone really said anything, but they just kind of give you the shifty eye a little bit. But so they did already put me on that high school. And I think my grandpa was proud of it. He wasn't like ashamed. I think he was like, my kid, my grandkid, she's going to, the higher up school. So I actually wanted to become a teacher and really pursue like going to college for 4 years. But my grandparents, my grandma especially, insisted that I learn a trade first. And she's like, and then once you have your trade, you can put yourself through college, no problem, but learn a trade. And they were so smart in doing that. I ended up loving my trade, and I didn't even keep going to school because I had already found like what I loved. And funny, grandma, she saw that. It's like she knew me, and she put me on the right path. And she felt also with a trade that you always have something to go back on. She saw that in the concentration camp, the people who had trades or played music, they were the ones that did a little bit better because they were needed. So for her, that was like a life lesson. You are going to learn something. Thank God. And I think that the Jehovah's Witness kids in Europe or other countries have it a little bit easier, because I feel like the U.S. needs to change it up a little bit. You don't need to go till 12th grade if you're going to learn a trade. They should already integrate that into high school, which some schools do, but the majority does not. I feel like it puts kids on such a path. Not everybody is made to go to study at university, and that's totally fine. But to just graduate with a diploma and then have nothing and then go work for a minimum wage, it's not a living wage. Like, we can't do that. We have to help people get on a path. And I feel like in Europe, they integrate learning a trade into the school system a little bit more, where in Europe, like, all my cousins, they all learned something, and they were witnesses during high school still already. And so I just think that is so important, because, oh my goodness, do I know so many Jehovah's Witness kids here in the States who were really pressured to pioneer and not learn anything. So they're just pioneering, and they didn't learn anything. So it was a little bit of an advantage being in Europe, where that's integrated into the system. In order to learn a trade, we had moved, and we lived very, very rural. There was nothing nearby where I could have gone to school. There was nothing where I could and learn something. So I had to move. There was just no choice. If I was going to learn something, I had to move. And my trade was taught actually at a university. And in order to be able to go, you had to be in the dorms. Freshman year, there was no choice. You had to be in the dorms, no loopholes. And maybe if we would have been like a little bit more acquainted with the American system of college and everything, maybe we would have been able to find a loophole, but we just didn't know. Like, they said you had to stay in the dorms freshman year, so I stayed in the dorms. And, the congregation already did not like that, but what are you going to do? Like, there was really no choice. I had to learn something. I had to move in order to learn something. That was just how it was. So naturally, for the parents, it's kind of like nerve-wracking when your kid moves away. And I don't even think like my parents were really that worried about me being in the dorms. It's just more of like being that far away. And so they took me to the new city, and they went to the meeting with me, and they kind of wanted to entrust me to the local congregation so that they take me under their wing. It's your community. You feel at home. This story is going to get so wild. I promise you guys. It's just, I can't even. I already have to, I just can't. You think all these Jehovah's Witnesses are such good people, and, oh, I feel so safe with my community. Yeah, no. Okay. So they went up to this one particular elder who had daughters and granddaughters, and he just seemed really nice. And my mom said to him, my daughter is going to move in. Can you please, take care of her? I entrust my child into this congregation. And he's like, sure, of course. And one of the things was that my mom was worried about me driving to meetings by myself constantly. And I get it, because if you are a freshman a lot of times in a university, and this is a fairly large university, parking's terrible. You get freshman parking, it's nowhere near your dorm. And of course, our meetings, nighttime, you have to travel at night. Can we take a minute here and think of all the sisters over the years, single sisters who had to travel at night, and how unsafe that is, that the organization expects you to be at every meeting as a single woman traveling at night. Country roads, the subway, inner city, nighttime, unsafe. Nobody gives a thought of these poor women traveling in these unsafe conditions. So for me, I had to walk in the dark to freshman parking, which was quite a hike, in a skirt, in heels. And my mom was like, I don't want you to do that at night. Like, I don't want you to do it. Like, have a congregation, have someone pick you up, like carpool or something. But I do not want you to walk to the parking lot at night. I just don't feel safe. And so it ended up being like, I was new in the hall. So I guess they kind of just forget that someone new was there, or it's an inconvenience. I get it, And so I had tried to make arrangements to travel with people to the meeting so I wouldn't have to go by myself. And They forgot. I was standing outside in the dark, and I told my mom, I'm like, nobody showed up. Like, and I tried to make arrangements, and I understand from the other perspective too how that is an inconvenience for other people. I get it. You know, they're worked all day. They have busy plans. It's just like, it's really like, you shouldn't have to go to the meeting is what it comes down to when it's not a safe condition. That's really what it comes down to. But the J-dubs teach you basically kill yourself, you know, go through alligator-infested rivers in order to go to the meeting. A girl had just been raped on campus, so it felt especially unsafe. She was walking at night, and some of the areas on campus where I was were really dark and secluded. And so was freshman parking. It just honestly was not safe for me to go at night and then come home from the meeting and it's dark, cold, and late. And so my mom, this is my family, they were like, okay, well, if no one's going to pick you up, we don't want you traveling alone at night. It's not safe. Don't go to the meeting during the week. And I'm like, okay. But the problem is, if you miss a meeting, you're going to be made to feel shame the Sunday that you show up, because Sunday was no problem. Daylight, you know, everyone's out and about. So I went to meetings Sundays, and then, you know, of course, where were you? And I just couldn't even handle like everyone asking me where I was during the midday week meeting. And I ended up just like, I'm like, I can't skip during the week and then go Sundays because of all the guilt and pressure. So I ended up just like not going to meetings anymore. And that was the first time, and it had nothing to do with me not believing it or whatnot. I didn't want to deal with all the questions. So sometimes I would go home over the weekends and I would go to meeting at home. This would have been a perfect time for me, you know, freshman in college, perfect time for me to quit going altogether. It was the first time I realized, wow, you have so much time if you don't do this thing. Like, it's amazing. I started going to the gym at night, or I started running, and I would see the sunset. And it was the time that Friends was on Thursday nights. You know, all the new episodes, they would air Thursday nights. And I definitely missed like almost every single episode. And that would always break my heart because the VCR didn't work and wouldn't tape. And there was not reruns yet. And it was my favorite show. And I just would miss it all the time. But here, like, I wasn't going to meetings. And I'm like, this is the dream. I can go for a jog and then watch Friends. Like, wow, this is awesome. Would have been such a great time to quit going to meetings altogether. But no. I really had it in my head, I'm just going to do this while I'm going to school, and then I'm going to, of course, resume going. So, anyways, one day, my mom, and we were all at my mom. So I was at my mom's, and I believe it was in the summertime. So we were on a break from college, and I was home, and I had friends from Europe visit, and the local news came on TV, and they're talking about a murder of a young woman who had gone to the Kingdom Hall, who was a Jehovah's Witness. And this young sister, she had gone to that new Kingdom Hall that I just started going to in my university city. And here's the kicker. This is how culty this whole thing is. The girl, the sister, she was murdered like 2 weeks before I moved there. I had not heard a thing about her. No one talked about it. No one said, oh, we had this sister who just got murdered. And you would think, like me saying, it's kind of, I feel unsafe at night going to the meeting, that especially since a young sister just got murdered, you would think, especially because of this, they would say, oh yeah, we're going to make an effort to come pick you up even more so. And no one even talked about it. I didn't even know this had happened till it was on the news. And my mom and I just looked at each other and we couldn't believe it. Like, we could not believe it. And they focus. It's not funny. I'm laughing because it's absurd. But it's just like, I can't even believe all this stuff. Like, it's just wild. The things you experience among God's people that are supposed to be so wonderful. They zoom in on the suspect of the murder case. And it is the elder that my mom had entrusted me to. No joke. On the news. I'm pretty sure they filmed him coming out of the Kingdom Hall too. So they're like, oh, this is the murder suspect. And we had the two brothers, Jehovah's Witnesses, from Europe staying with us when we're all watching this on the news. Mom and I flipping out, like, what is happening, And the two brothers, they looked at each other, they looked at the TV, and they go, oh, he did it. He did it. But it's just, this whole thing is so out of this world absurd when we call it our spiritual paradise. And here's a murder suspect from a girl that was missing for days and then found murdered. That's our spiritual paradise. That's pretty scary. So I find out that this sister had lived with the elder and his wife, but had just moved out. And it was just a very, very suspicious thing. So a friend who was not a witness noticed that this girl was missing. And nobody really else said anything. And so this girl was kind of ringing the alarm bells, like, I haven't seen her. Where is she? And so she called the elder and his wife because the girl had lived with them. And she said, can you meet me at the house? We need to look, like, if she's there, or maybe she got hurt. We need to look. Now, side note, this elder was also a former cop, so he knows the procedure. He knows. And I'm going to try to tell this as unbiased as I can so you can make your own opinion. But they got there, and I think somebody had a key, so they went in. And the elder and his wife start cleaning up. The girl, and it was a mess. It was a big mess, and he starts cleaning up. And the girl, the friend, she says, stop, you can't do that. We shouldn't be touching anything. What are you doing? And they're cleaning. And they're cleaning everything. So that's already, like, very strange, right? And then there's a message on the answering machine, and the elder and his wife, I think they deleted it. There's something. Here's the whole kicker about this whole story. There's a podcast that was made about this, like a murder mystery podcast that I just recently discovered. And I'm just like, I didn't even know this had gone on. I did not even know. And then the elder ends up being the number one suspect. The murder never got resolved. He passed away recently. There was really no justice for this poor girl. But to me, it was just so striking how culty the congregation as a whole is, like this whole organization, that you can move into a hall and this big, huge thing just happened, that one of your little sheep just got murdered and they don't talk about it. And that's just wild to me. And here we moved in and we go to this particular elder where you're thinking, I'm safe with these people, and that was probably the least safe place. I mean, just unbelievable, the stories of a people that think they're so much better than others, that think that we have so much love among ourselves. We are the most caring people. Just, they are no better than anyone else, and they're probably actually a little bit worse because of this like collective narcissism where they think they're so high and mighty, but that very fact that they feel so high and mighty is already putting them below other people. And we have all the same problems that other people have. It's no different. If you heard the story about the spiritual man versus the company man, it's like 2 episodes back. It's about my grandpa. My grandpa and another elder who saw all this wrongdoing in the congregation and nothing was being done about it. I have to add a little bit about the other elder who also got deleted. It was like a witch hunt. The whole body of elders were after and out to get my grandpa and this other elder. The other elder was in this congregation that had all the wrongdoing, and he knew that they were after him. He was actually a former Bethelite, had served at Bethel for a long, long time, and I would say that he was more of a spiritual man than a company man because he saw this wrongdoing. So he kind of went rogue before he was deleted, and he was assigned the local needs for the congregation. So the local needs talk is supposed to be like talking about problems that the congregation has without mentioning names and just kind of being vague, but just saying things that the congregation needs to work on. And this elder goes on stage and he lists every problem that this congregation had. And my friend was a kid at the time, and she was in the audience, and she didn't understand what some of these things were. She told me this years later. She's like, I was at that local needs, and I was like, Mom. Okay, so here's the things that he laid out. He started like just going off, and he's like, our congregation, we have everything that you could think of. Homosexuality, we have it. Fornication, we have it. Adultery, we have it. Bestiality, we have it. Pedophilia, we have it. And my friend was sitting next to her mom as a little kid, and she is like, during the meeting, she's like, Mom, what's bestiality? And she remembered. She told me this later, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And seriously, these were really all the things that the congregation was dealing with at the time. Unbelievable. So whenever you feel like, oh, they are such good people, they come with their Bible and want to talk to you about Jesus, and they pretend to be so holy, they're just like the Pharisees. Oh, I am so much better than these Catholics. Oh, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. I am a pioneer. I am an elder. I am so much better than these Lutherans over here. No, you're not. No, you're not. It's just, you're the same. And you have huge problems. And probably a lot of this is because of like repression or something. I mean, there was an article about the Catholic Church, and it was on the Watchtower library, and it said in the article that they probably have this massive child abuse problem because they are forced to live a celibate life. And I thought, well, what is the difference when we're encouraging people to be single and pursue singleness? That is definitely kind of encouraging celibacy too, and in turn you have all these sexually repressed people. I mean, who has more problems than Bethel? Bethel has so many problems with homosexuality, with sexuality and all that, because you're putting all these single people together. I'm sure a lot of them are gay, and they're having to hide and feel like, oh, I'm going to move to Bethel and I'm going to like be close to the source and be holier, but then really you're in a pool full of other guys who are quote unquote struggling with the same thing, and it's like the perfect opportunity. Please live your life, be happy and free. This religion is terrible. I mean, it's so oppressive to people, and sexual repression is so unhealthy. I hope people find freedom. I really do. And like Bethel, if you haven't heard the pillow talk, oh my God, Gary Breaux gave a talk to the Bethelites, and it's just wild. I can't imagine. I always thought, like, I'm going to send my son to Bethel, and he wanted to go when he was a kid. And I didn't know that when they come to Bethel here, so many of them are virgins. And then you get sat down and you are giving this talk by Gary Breaux to introduce you as a Bethelite. And the talk is about homosexuality, masturbation. It's about rubbing your genitals on a pillow. And I mean, it's just insane. When I first saw it, I'm like, this is what they show the new Bethelites when they go to Bethel. I can't imagine like my kid listening to something like that. But I also thought, if my grandparents ever heard this talk, like, who had the idea to make this? This is such a joke. Like, it should be like on John Oliver or something. Like, I can't even believe how ridiculous it is. Also in Bethel, like, they had a gym where you could work out, and they wouldn't allow mirrors in there because it promotes vanity and homosexuality. Like, this is so stupid. Oh my God. Because really, you need a mirror in the gym if you're lifting for your form. I mean, are they crazy? And it is just like the Pharisees, you know, they put all these burdens on people and they put all these little extra laws on people. And meanwhile, you have a suspected murderer among your midst and the biggest pedophile problem. I mean, we would harp on the Catholic Church and the abuse. We would harp on them. And that was a big point to me. When I thought, we would go to people and say, look at what the Catholic Church is doing with this scandal. But actually, they're admitting to it and they're trying to deal with it. And the Jehovah's Witnesses, never do they talk about it. They just hide it. And then you have Brother Let like saying, oh, these are all apostate lies, when Jeffrey Jackson was just in court in the Australia Royal Commission testifying to 1,006 pedophiles that were never reported to the police. And you call that apostate lies? That's disgusting. And it's victim shaming, and it's re-abusing the poor victims. Like, it's just absolutely disgusting. And when I was waking up, I said to my mom, how can I go when we have a massive child abuse problems, and we would say, oh, but look at all the Catholic people. They stay Catholic despite all this pedophilia. How can I do the same thing? How can I say, oh, but I'm going to stay a Jehovah's Witness despite all these, like, child abuse cases? Like, no. And if you just put in child abuse or pedophilia in the Catholic Church in the Watchtower Library, the articles harping on the Catholic Church, like, what hypocrites. And I read somewhere, and I cannot find the statistic anymore, but per capita, the Jehovah's Witnesses are a very small group. So per capita, we actually have the worst child abuse rates compared to the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church is huge. So yes, they have a lot of cases, but per capita, the Jehovah's Witnesses have it even worse. And that is absolutely disgusting. So when you're donating money to Watchtower, I mean, kiss those dollars goodbye, because they're going to go to the next lawsuit. How gross. I can't support that. I can't support fighting against these victims like Candace Conti. If you haven't seen her case, it's heartbreaking, and everybody should watch it, because the Watchtower, they don't care about people. They don't care about victims. Do they ever reach out to these kids and say, we're so sorry for what happened to you? That is not going to happen. So I leave you on this note. This was a wild one, and we still have to talk about child baptism. That's a whole nother episode. So we'll see you in the next episode.
Be considered masturbation? Suppose a brother starts rubbing his genitals against a pillow. He gets an erection, but stops before having an orgasm. Is he masturbating? Yes, again, because he's deliberately stimulating himself, whether he has an orgasm or not. How about having an emission of semen at night, maybe even after an erotic dream? Is that masturbation? No. Jehova made that a part of a man's reproductive system, and it happens without any deliberate stimulation.